Hello and welcome to tonight's Get in Tune. I have a great show tonight. I was thinking about who should I have on in the last show for October. Now, I was thinking, what can I do? It's going to be Halloween on Monday. Maybe I should do something. And even though I'm not a horror fan, I should bring someone who knows horror, who does a lot of great writing, you know. Um, so I thought, who kind of is the scariest, creepiest guy I know? And I thought of my good friend Don Smith. So let's bring on, as he goes by. Actually, let me ask him. I don't even know if he does it professionally. Don Everett Smith Jr. Let's bring him on. Hello.
Hey, Michael, thank you so
Hey,
much for having me on. I
you're
appreciate it.
you're very welcome. I'm sorry about the intro. You're not a creepy guy.
No, I
Scary,
was
yeah,
going to
but
say,
not
I've
creepy.
worked very hard to get that moniker. I mean, dude, it takes a lot. I mean, speaking of which, I have been living at your house. In fact, I am in your basement now. You didn't know that. The calls are coming from inside your house. That's what's going on. Just a heads up, you need more Doritos. I'm getting kind of hungry down here, so if you can get that in the fridge, I would really, really appreciate that.
I don't
I have
disagree
been
with you.
very respectable, but I will admit I have been stealing your socks. I basically I am setting up one of those Japanese vending machine things where you can put weird clothes in there and let people buy them, and it's going to just be called Gracia socks. So I think we're going to be making a couple of bucks off of that, which
You got-
reminds me, I do need to cut you in for part of
Thank you. I
that. So
appreciate that.
again, I take great pride in my creepiness.
So, by the way, I know you have Don Everett Smith Jr. up on there, but do you go by professionally Don Everett Smith Jr. or is it Don Smith?
Yeah, yeah. Don, like obviously my dad's name was Don Everett Smith. And
Yes.
so I was like, and the thing is that I've always liked Don Everett Smith Jr. I always thought it had such a writer's flair sounding
Yep.
name because like you've got the single syllable of Don, the single syllable of Smith, which is probably the most common name in Western civilization, next to names like Muhammad, Lee, or Patel. Smith is basically that. And when you have Everett, Everett is just one of those names. It's just cool. It's uncommon. And so having the Don, four syllables, single syllable, another four syllables type of thing. So that's why I went by Don Everett Smith Jr. The only time I ever do it any different is if I'm writing. I was writing for a local newspaper out here in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, where I live, and it was D. Everett Smith because I was trying to separate that style of writing where I'm covering town boards. And am I really writing about, which is different from Don Everett Smith Jr., which is a guy that is writing about suicidal photographers encountering cryptid demonic things in a forest. So I wanted to differentiate the two. But most of the people, like honestly, the name I get called most of the time is Mr. Don because I work in a local before and after care program here. So
Hmm.
it's a very unique lifestyle that I have. I work in the education system. I work in before and after care, and I write about well, weirdo monsters that just eat people randomly. And so, and I write about comic books, and I write about vampires that are are
Yes.
rescuing people that are on the side of the road, and guys running like dead ghoulish guys that are running around with candles removing body parts to add to his body. So I mean, there's a lot going on. In between that, I try to be a husband to my wife Laura. And I'm just gonna say it. We celebrated 20 years. This
Congratulations.
Thank you. We celebrated 20 years last Wednesday, in fact, and also I'm also a father to a handful of cats and a tortoise. So that's pretty much what my day is. It's like between education, thinking about horror, thinking about public domain superheroes, thinking about Old West, thinking about um, just local history and true crime and pulp and all of that, and that's pretty much what I'm all about. So it keeps me very, very busy. So
I understand. It sounds like it. Um, so you mentioned a lot of stuff, and we're going to try to cover as much as we can tonight. I know you kind of have a tight deadline to have to leave, which
thank
is
you, I
fine. It
appreciate it.
happens. We will stick to it. So um,
And I'm more
as
than happy to come back. You're a friend. You've always been a friend to me, and you've been nothing but kind and great to me, especially in some of our side projects that you've been working
like,
on. You've stepped up to the plate and everything. And I wish I could say this current project that we're working on, but we really can't.
yeah,
But let's just say we keep pushing forward like it's our own personal crusade that we're going to get this done. So that's why
yes,
I'm
we
like really
will.
excited.
And thank you for those words, man. You know, this is the first time we've seen each other face to face. I think since the time I did the how to animate in Photoshop panel for an online convention like a year or two ago.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's right. And we
I think
haven't
that was
seen yeah, and we
yeah,
haven't seen each other face to face since I
yeah.
moved from Jersey out here to Pennsylvania.
But you're coming. Are
But
you coming out for the PulpCon?
no, unfortunately, I'm not able
Oh,
to because we're just so much is going on here. I really
but I
want to.
needed you to sign my book.
I'm sorry. Which, by the way, how cool was it to be involved with that? We really need to go out of our way to talk about probably one of the finest publishers that is out there, and that is Audrey Parente and everybody associated with her organization there that
Don't
published
forget
those
Rich
works.
Harvey
I'm sorry.
and Rich. Don't forget Rich
Oh
Harvey.
yeah, of course, yeah.
Which by the way, Rich and Audrey are coming back on the show next week to talk about Pulp Adventure Con, which is their show they're putting on, and I will be at next. Well, not this Saturday, the following Saturday. You
Oh
know,
yeah, it's going to be fantastic because Audrey and Rich just do such an amazing job, and the thing is that they work so hard. And what's great about the internet is that pulp writing, which is um, which always has such a unique history in the world of comic books and science fiction and horror and all and fantasy and all of that, is making a comeback, and we have them to thank. They're one of the
yes.
people, them and the wonderful people, excuse me, at Pro Se Productions are making a comeback, and that is a really really good thing. And it's just we go back to some really fine writing where you got people that could very quickly turn around, where it's like you get one writer, he's not known for one thing, but one month he's writing a story about he's writing a space opera story that you would see in like an episode of Star Trek. Then the next thing he's writing like a Twilight Zone esque story. Then another episode he's writing a true crime, then a western, and so forth. And those were the real writers then, back in the days where you had like your early days of your Richard Mathesons and Richard Blocks and I am H. Beam Pipers. Those guys knew how to do it, and they were just so wonderful. And I believe that we're seeing that in writing today, especially in comic book writing uh, and in modern science fiction, fantasy, unusual fiction, like genre fiction. You're seeing
Yeah.
that these weird types of stories and storytellers
You know,
are.
it's funny you say that because I do want to get to that in a little bit. I buy a lot of comics, mostly digital these days, and I'm on sites like Indie Planet or I'll look at Gumroad or Drive Through Comics, whatever. And I buy the digital mostly because of the price and the lack of storage space in my studio. It's I
Oh
only
yeah.
buy like I mostly buy trades if I'm going to bring something home. I don't usually have a lot of floppies anymore. But I'm finding what I'm attracted to have that pulp feel. You know, a lot of the public domain characters, which we'll talk about in a bit. Um, but but they do have that, like you were mentioning, the genre specific pulpiness to it, um, that I'm enjoying much more than what I see on the shelves at the comic shop.
Can I just real quick,
Yeah.
just we have got to do a massive shout out to the people at Indie Planet and Drive Through. Those guys, what they have, they do such an amazing job. Like, because independent comic book creators can say, you want to see my work, go here. And that is what is so wonderful about Drive Through and Indie Planet. I will, like, I'm not much of a comic book writer these days, uh, but I still
But
get,
you do have stories that are going to be coming out soon, illustrated
yes,
by me.
yeah,
That I had took some time getting there, but they're coming out very.
right. But the thing was, is that what is great is that these people provide outlets for indie creators, and I got to tell you, somebody that works with education, being able to say, "Hey, these are my comic books," and I actually can go into the field, and I can actually have kids. They'll be sitting there like, there's this wonderful platform called Epic that kids read books on, and some of my stuff is on there,
Yeah,
and to be able to see that and you be able to say, oh yeah, like, and I'll be looking at a page and I'll actually try to remember the day I wrote the dialogue for that, or what was I doing and where
yeah,
was I sitting, and that type of thing. And it's really great. Like, being a comic book writer, I've been able, like, kids have been like, oh, you make comic books, that's so cool. And it really allows me to like go in and have an in with kids these
yeah,
days, because most kids today are like, they're either watching, they're playing video games, of course, and they're on TikTok, YouTube, a lot of social media like that, and a lot of it is just strict flip, 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 flip. You watch one channel, flip. Watch one video, flip. And that's kind of the thing that we're dealing with, and to be able to step into that to that universe, to be able to step into that world and say, oh yeah, there I am right there, is
yeah.
really cool. And we couldn't do that without organizations like Indie Planet, uh, um, Drive Through Comics, and also one that's based out of Long Island called Comic Book Flea Market. The people there that run that are just absolutely wonderful as well. And a lot of my stuff has been published through them. A handful of my things have been published through them.
I gotta
And
look them up. I'm not too. I've heard the name, but I've never been too familiar with them.
oh
Comic book
yeah,
flea
yeah,
market. It's called
Comic Flea Market. Yeah,
comic flea market. I gotta
yeah,
make
they're
a note of that. Where are my notes?
yeah, they're associated with Toledo Publishing and stuff. So I mean, we got
Okay.
three wonderful organizations right there that are frankly, they're the ones that are, they're stepping up to the plate, and they are going, like, I don't want to trash Diamond, but Diamond has a monopoly on it, and you're dealing with people that make comic books. they're like they're like, I hate to say the word schlub, but schlubs like you and me, who can only maybe afford to publish 10, 15, 20 comics at a time. And that's the
Yeah.
great thing about things like Comic Book Flea Market and other places like that. So, and
Yeah.
what's great about this is, by us talking about them, we can make other comic creators aware of it, and other animators and other writers and other things as well. And then, hey, we can point it out to this and send the link out to the show to them and say, hey, look, we're giving you guys advertising, and it gets their names out there so people can see this. And the more creators that are out there, the more that is out there. I'm going to go on a slight tirade, and forgive me for
Go
this.
for it. Because
The
we haven't even gotten to my usually number one question, but
oh, okay. The
let's
comic
hear your
book
tirade.
industry is dying. As simple as that. What we knew growing up as DC and Marvel, they're dying. They are not giving the people what they want. When people complain about what it is that they want, the creators turn around and basically say, well, if that's the way you feel, I don't want your money. Go away. And also, if you don't like what I'm writing, then you are some sort of bigoted homophobe or something like that. And the stories are not. adventures. They're not like we're literally reading, like you read an issue, like you've got somebody like Crossbones standing on Captain America's skull. How is Cap going to get out of this? Find out next issue. In issues nowadays, they don't tell adventures, they lecture. And what's
Yeah.
happening is that indie creators are basically, it's indie creators and manga that are more or less keeping the sequential art industry going. And it's like the big guys that we like now, it's kind of like, what's the point of reading a goofy Batman story where he stands around and he lectures somebody instead of breaking the guy's jaw? And when we can just sit back and watch either a movie with Christian Bale doing it, or Ben Affleck doing it, or Michael Keaton, or Robert Pattinson doing it. So it's just kind of like, that's what the industry is. And thankful to indie guys, they're the ones that are saving the industry, I believe.
I do agree with you on some of the points, specifically the point that they are not adventure stories. They're not action stories anymore. It's almost like they're slice of life stories with a little action sprinkled in here and there, just to remind people it's a superhero book.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's not that. I mean, I can't. I don't knock the creators. Um, because they're making basically what the company is telling them to make. You know, I'm not saying the creators believe 100% in what they're doing. Um, yeah, and I don't want to make this the show. I don't want this to become a sidetrack,
Sure,
but
sure.
I just want to say this. And I've said this on the show before, so this isn't different than my belief already here. Superman's son. All right. When his character came out that he was going to be gay, they did not advertise him as here's the adventure that he has to take. They just advertised him as the gay Superman. Now, because of that, I chose not to read it because you couldn't, not because he was gay, but because you couldn't get me interested in a story with this character, right? A couple of months back, and I'm going to say it's been about maybe August time, I was at my local comic shop, and everyone knows I'm a DC guy over Marvel, and Superman is one of my favorites. I mean, if I just turn, I got my Jim Shore Superman, my Mego Superman, my Christopher Reeve Christmas ornament Superman back
Oh,
there. I
man.
even have a oh, I even have the McFarlane Superman on my drawing table. You
Oh,
know,
that's
the
awesome.
one. So the remake. So I'm a big Superman fan, right? And I said, what is out there that will that I'll enjoy in DC? What's going on in DC? And they gave me, I think it was part of the Dark Crisis story. I don't know if it was that or if it was another maybe what do they call it, Future State or whatever it was. And he was one of the primary characters in there. All right, Jonathan Kent was one of the primary, and he was a great character. He really was. It wasn't about him being gay. There was not. It was the story and the way his character.
Mhm.
So if they pitched me Jonathan Kent in his adventure, I probably would have bought the book earlier and read it.
Yes.
You know, instead of
Yes.
just being like, he's gay, he's gay, he's gay,
Yeah,
and if I
exactly.
don't like that, I'm the bad guy. I didn't buy it because you couldn't hook me on a story. That's all.
That's that is exactly it. I had a
That's
conversation with somebody about this very topic today. In fact, it was a gay person I had this with. And it was just kind of like, my attitude was simply, I would think that the best thing that could happen to someone of an LGBT status in a superhero story is that it's treated like, yeah, big deal. It's like, okay, I need someone to save the day. Okay, how about Superman? Cool. All right, Superman leaves his boyfriend alone and then he goes and fights Desaad.
Mhm.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's what I want. I mean, like, if you can have, I don't care who a person dates, if you can tell me a good story, that's what I want to see. And I don't want to see a big deal making about, hey, look at this. I mean, I go back to, are we judging the person by the character, by what they're doing? How do they treat each other? Some of the greatest people I've met in my life are gay. Some of the worst people I've met in my life are gay. Some of the greatest people I met in my life are born again Christians. Some of the worst people in my life that I will snarl at when I see them are born again Christians as well. They should be treated, people should be treated like, the big thing is, are you going to tell an exciting story? If so, go for it. And that's what I wanted. That's honestly what I want to see. Like, if you can make, instead of like co-opting Indiana Jones to be gay, if you can make an Indiana Jones-esque character and he likes guys, so what? Make this story exciting. I would rather see that. I mean, look at how popular Torchwood was with Captain Jack running around.
That was, and his character was a great character. I mean, obviously he started in Doctor Who, but his character was great, and you know, he I gotta say, I'm a Matt Smith guy over a David Tennant guy. I like both doctors, but Matt Smith was my no. I'm a Matt Smith doctor, but Jack's character was during the Tennant run, and they were some of my favorite episodes. I will say that the having Captain Jack there was some of my favorite, because he added a nice sense of humor to it as well.
He really did,
and he was deep down he was a good guy. They wrote him as a jerk in the beginning a little bit, but eventually deep down, and then when it sprung off into Torchwood, just fantastic.
Yeah, it was not a perfect series, and I have my issues with it. But no, I mean, like with the storytelling.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, and but the thing is that, like, Jack was dating the Yanto Jones character. I don't know if I'm saying his name right.
I don't remember his character's name, but I know it was almost like the assistant of the.
The two of them started dating, and it was just kind of like, and what it did was, there was one in one of the series, they killed off his partner, and he actually had an emotional baggage to that. And as a guy that has dated someone, if I lost my loved one, I could completely relate to that. There was no Captain Jack crying about his lost lover and going, "This is because you're all a bunch of homophobes, you silly aliens." No, it's just straight up, you mean aliens killed the person that I love, and now I'm really mad at you. And I completely got that. And it was just kind of like, because good acting and good storytelling transcends anything. Simple as that.
All right, let's slide up. We got a new guest.
This is Eleanor. Hi, sweetie. Come here.
Hello, Eleanor. Sesame's in the other room because I keep the store closed. He doesn't come in and mess with my show. Let's move on to another topic, because we already spent almost a half hour just on this stuff. And I want the audience to learn about you. I want them to learn about, some of the stuff you've worked on. Now, one of the things that you worked on was this book. Okay, we'll just get this out of the way first. I have shown this book, I don't know how many times on my show. You guys can get it on Amazon.com or go to Bold Venture Press. It's called Zorro's Exploits. Don wrote a story in here. I'd have to look up the title, but I got to illustrate it.
Yes, you did, and you did an amazing job with it.
Thank you very much. And one of the things I will say, and I'll thank you on the air publicly, without you, I would not have illustrated any story in this book. I remember it's called A Wolf in the Land. Now, I will say this. I remember the phone call. You called me up and you were basically like, "You like Zorro, right?" Knowing the answer, obviously, because Zorro is like my all-time favorite fictional character. He's probably, along with Okay.
Right.
But you know, it's I am such a Zorro fan since childhood. I have so many stories. I've watched the stuff. I've read different things. I've read comics. You know, everything. And I'm like, yeah, and you're like, well, there's this publishing company that asked me to write a Zorro story, and they're looking for illustrators. Would you be interested? And I was like, oh my, I was like in awe. And I said, yes, yes, yes. And you hooked me up with Audrey. You gave me her email. I wrote her. I did some samples, and within like 24 hours, 40 hours, whatever, she was like, yeah, we'll give you a story. I ended up getting two stories in there,
Yes.
two great stories, by the way. Yours
We
was
had
the
some
second one.
amazing writers in this
Yeah.
project.
Oh my God, I haven't even had a chance to finish the book just because of time, but I've read a couple of. This isn't my reading book. This is my first show book. My
Right,
reading book's a little more beaten up, um,
right.
but uh, but yeah, I've read. God, I don't know, at least 5 or 6 stories in here outside of the ones I illustrated, and they are great. Everything in here is really good. Um, but yeah, so Zorro, definitely a pulp type of hero. You're you're a fan of things like the pulp, and I wanted to ask you. My number one question always is for so the audience can get to know you is how did you get into writing? Who are your influences? And Dylan in the comments said you've been writing for about 25 years. Is that correct? I don't have your. I don't think that was in your
Yes, I
bio.
have.
Okay.
I would consider myself a professional writer
Mhm.
since I was about 20 years old. And here I
Okay.
am. Gosh, I just turned 48. Holy
Wow.
cow.
I got
And
45 coming up next
yeah,
few months.
yeah. And just turning 48, and I have written for a long, long time. And I would honestly say that I've just started hitting my niche of what it is that I really like to do within the last maybe 10 years or so of the stuff that I
Mm.
really enjoy doing. I will tell you, the very first story that I ever wrote, I was in 6th grade, and I wrote a mystery based around an Encyclopedia Brown story. And I love Encyclopedia Brown. I can go back and reread his stories now.
Mm.
And I always try to, once I figured out the trick of how to see what went wrong or what was, or somebody would say something or somebody would do something silly, I would then go back and try to figure out what it was that, um, like, figure out the mystery of it. So that was the first story I wrote. And then the second story I remember, I wrote a superhero story when I was about 17, 16, 17. And I wrote it out all in longhand. And I had always wanted to be a writer. And I'm amazed that one of the downsides of being a writer is probably every one of us have a billion short stories started and stopped. And same thing with novels
Yeah.
that are sitting around. I probably in my on my reading stand probably have at least 10 to 15 books that I have, like, that I started 3 pages in, and then something comes up and I find a new book. And
Hold on. I want to show you something. These are my recent purchases. All right. This is small
uh
from a comic shop. So I got a Superman, a Ninja Turtles, Spider-Man Annual,
oh,
Death
nice.
Dealer, from Dynamite Ming the Merciless. It's called Merciless. It's the origin of Ming.
Oh, nice.
And I got this action comic, which this one I read. This it's basically Mongol's origin. It's the first part, and then I got this book here, The Golden Age of Superman
Oh, wow.
books. I have skimmed almost every one of these, you know, but I haven't read anything. And this doesn't count what is in my bedroom nightstand. Okay,
Right, right,
so
right.
anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, that's okay. And in the last few years, I've just been writing more and more. I've done some, like, I'll do short stories and other things like that. And I think the first real story that did it for me was I wrote I wrote this one short story called Thrill Scarlet, and it was about like a Zorro-esque, because when you read my early stuff, you see a lot of Zorro-esque guys running around, and it was a Zorro-esque story going after vampires, and then I'd written stuff for Pro Se. I'd written two short stories. One was in their book called The Masked Rider, which I was like, I don't know if I'll ever get a chance to write a Zorro story, but I'm gonna go. This was my
Yeah.
chance to write about a masked vigilante that was a cowboy back in the day.
Yeah.
So I wrote that, and then I had the opportunity to write a Sherlock Holmes story, and it was basically Sherlock Holmes versus Zorro, but I called the character the Martyr, and instead of giving him a sword, I gave him a couple of handguns, and so it was, and that was in a book called Beyond Watson, and the wonderful people at Bellinger Publishing was able to publish that. So writing those stories, that's what led me to write for Bold Venture Press, and I would just write little short stories here and there of things that I would just inspire me, because I really started pushing horror back in 2016. That's when I really wanted to write
Yeah.
the unusual, the weird, the horrific stuff that I grew up getting nightmares from, and it was just kind of like I wanted to recapture those atmospheres that you saw in old Hammer movies, old Vincent Price movies, the that forbidden, I'm not allowed to be watching this 1980s horror movie that, oh no, here comes Jason, I better get under the covers type of thing. I wanted to go back and recapture that feeling. First movie I ever saw that scared the living life out of me was called Terror in the Wax Museum, and Ray Milland was in it. And it's basically about this wax museum that has all these famous killers in them. And the one Jack the Ripper killer came to life and started killing people. And the Jack the Ripper character, man, did he give me nightmares. Like, even to this day, I can look down my basement and see him staring up at me with that weird, he had like the whitest face. It was like pale, like borderline white, and his mouth was like blood red lips, and I don't mean like lipstick. And the sneer and the smile on him, oh my gosh, he like that scared me so much, and I want to recapture those feelings. That's what started inspiring me in 2016. And before that, I had written numerous comic book stories, and a lot of my comic books and a lot of the stuff I write is exploring folklore, exploring the paranormal, exploring the unusual. And this is what's going to lead me into public domain characters. I, of course, in my head, have created some original characters. Vampire the Lost Highway, Thrill Scarlet, the stuff I wrote for Pro Se, other stuff like that.
What didn't you have I can't remember. Didn't you have a Highwayman character?
Yeah, that Vampire the Lost Highway.
That's
yeah.
No,
yeah,
but I meant like he was a highwayman.
What would happen is that he was cursed to wander this forgotten road in this town called Fort Hawk, and he would help out people along the road, and it's kind of like he was cursed to wander up and down that. Okay. And I had written a handful of stories with him, and some of those comics have been published. I still need to republish a bunch of those, but I was inspired by, it was a cross between the Jersey Devil and stuff written by the amazing Robert Schneck, and he researched things. The horror movie The Bye Bye Man is actually based on one of his stories that he wrote. And it was a true story, and I was completely caught up with cryptozoological stuff, like people seeing Bigfoots, winged creatures, and other stuff.
I love that stuff.
Oh yeah, stuff is great.
But not horror based. For me, I don't like the horror based, but I love the concept
Oh
of
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I like
cryptozoology.
taking it in a horror direction.
Yeah,
And one of the other things that I love is I just realized one day, like it sounds really weird, but why do I need to create my own characters when really good stuff is out there?
absolutely.
Completely analogous to, like, hey, if you like writing Batman, there's things called the Black Lion in the public domain. I mean, I spend more time on the public domain superhero Wikipedia page than I do on just about anything.
Let me tell you, so you know how people keep like their social media sites in the background usually? That is on the same like I have a one whole thing. It's like my Facebook, my Instagram, my Twitter, all that along with my email. That's one window, like one internet window, and I keep that on my laptop in front of me.
Oh yeah,
On there is also the public domain Wikipedia page website, because when I'm no matter what's going on in my head, I'm a big fan of public domain characters,
oh
just like you
yeah,
are, and I'm always looking for something to use with my original characters, or if I can't figure out, I have an idea for something, what character would fit from the public
yeah,
domain into my
exactly.
story. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that in excuse me,
yeah,
in this day and age when comic books are really beginning to stink, one of the things that I take a lot of inspiration from is Alan Moore, who Alan Moore, basically they gave him one Superman story to do, and it was like gangbusters. Like he ran with it and it became very popular. Well, he got into a bit of a war of words, and I'm not doing the story justice, but Alan Moore, who has grudges against pretty much everybody in the comic industry, basically got really annoyed with DC Comics, and he's like, well, you
yeah,
know what, I'm not going to do Superman anymore. Well, Rob Liefeld creates this character called Supreme,
yeah.
which is,
It's it's
yeah, it's Superman, but in a lot of white costume and a white hair. It
yeah,
gave him the red capes and the red boots. And then he said to Alan Moore, here, do what you would have done with Superman with this. And he ran with it. And he told some absolutely amazing
yeah,
stories. I mean, like you sit there and read them and go, oh, that's Luthor, Brainiac, blah, blah, blah. But he told better Batman, he told better Superman stories with the non-Superman character than if he had Superman, because he was able to run with it. And it's kind of like that, like if the way things have been going, like the way Lord of the Rings, and I can tell in the background that you're a big fan, Rings of Power, I didn't even waste my time with it. And it is
mhm,
probably $1 billion flop. But here's the thing, you could go back and you can read what inspired Richard Wagner's Ring opera. And you could take that and run with that. And there's your own Lord of the Rings. The stuff that you would have put with Lord of the Rings, you could put into that. You can retell that story. You can redo those. And there that satisfies the fantasy thing. You don't like what they're doing with Star Trek, and Picard has been half a joke, and I
I
have
haven't
no idea.
watched that at all. I don't have the service to
You're
watch
not
that.
missing much. And Discovery, all I can say is Akiva Goldsman is a big part of that, and it's best to keep a distance from that. And you watch that, and you go, "What in the world is going on?" Well, you know what? Public domains. There is actually an app for called Free Comics that you can download, and it has access to tons and tons and tons of public domain comic books.
I think that, by the way, I think that's only Android. You have an Android phone, correct?
Yes, yeah.
Because you told me about that app, and I couldn't. I don't think I can get it on my iPhone. I have to look.
Oh,
I
okay.
think that might be
Well,
only Android based.
Well,
But go
here's the
ahead.
deal. Go get a track phone. Go get a track phone for like $5 and just use it for Wi-Fi. Simple as that. And carry it around for that. But the thing is that there are plenty of there's like comics in there called Space Rovers. There's Lars from Mars, and a lot of these like have silly names, but there are spacefaring space opera stuff that if you
Yeah,
had the right person that could go in there and mine it, and you can go, boom, I've got my own Star Trek right here. And it's already the
Yeah.
pre-existing characters that are now in the public domain. It's again, if you didn't like the last Robin Hood movie, then you do something with Robin Hood. You don't like the last King Arthur movie? Well, King Arthur's public domain. Sherlock Holmes is public domain. Yeah. Go do something with him. That's to me what's so amazing. Doctor Who. You don't like what they're doing with Doctor Who. Then you can run. There's this character called Dr. Omega that came out in 1906 that bears a very striking resemblance to William Hartnell, the first Doctor. You can run with him. Simple like that. You can take him, put him in some of H.G. Wells's world, Jules Verne's world, and you have your own Dr. Omega adventures.
You know, it's funny. I'm sorry to interrupt. I want to say this, but I don't know if I ever told you. Now, I've loved public domain for years. I only started getting into it and using it probably maybe like 2016 when you were doing got into your stuff with the horror type of thing. Yeah. But you mentioned Alan Moore. Alan Moore had a fantastic book that was made up of public domain characters.
League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
That is where I first, and I did not realize those characters were public domain.
Oh yeah.
Until someone told me about public domain somewhere in the, that they were the characters somewhere in the early 2000s, or mid 2000, whatever it was. And I was like, And then I started researching. Excuse me. And then, like I said, around the same time you got into like the horror stuff, writing it, I started becoming overly fascinated by public domain.
Oh yeah.
But it wasn't until about 2 years ago that I really considered putting them into my own stories.
Yeah. And what's great is that you can do your own thing with them, because what is also interesting about the public domain concept is, let's take the character of Daredevil. The public domain version of him, where he's got one half of his costume is dark blue, another half is either yellow or red, depending on how he's drawn.
Got his boomerangs, guys, and around his waist are spikes.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And the thing is that I could take that character, and the smart thing would be, obviously, you would want to change his name, considering how the Marvel character, the blind lawyer, is trademarked by Marvel.
Well, I will say this before, just so people understand.
Sorry, I'm getting over bronchitis too.
It's okay. You can use Daredevil as the character's name. You can't put it on the title of the comic. Okay? Right. Just so you guys know that. You can't. Marvel owns that trademark, not just the copyright, but the trademark to the name Daredevil. So putting it on the title will get a cease and desist order from Marvel. But calling your character Daredevil in the comic is 100% okay.
Right. You could, call the comic like Midnight Adventures, and then you open up your cover, and it's got Daredevil. It's got Daredevil. Yeah, but what's great about it is, if I took that Daredevil character and said, hey, you know what? I want to have Daredevil travel back in time to the American Revolution and let him help George Washington defeat the British at the Battle of Yorktown. You can take your Daredevil and say, I want my Daredevil in my story to be running around New York City, and he's putting an end to a cocaine ring. And the thing is that you and I can't sue each other for using Daredevil. However, if I read Mike's story and said, hey, that's a great idea, I'm going to take my Daredevil and have him in New York City taking on a cocaine ring, then you could come after me for that.
Yeah, there is a, what was I going to say? Like Dynamite did Project Superpowers. That was all public domain characters. Now, they've used the same costumes that go back to, they changed a few things here and there, but for the most part, they used the same costumes that were the original costumes that were when the character originally came out in the 30s, 40s, 50s, whenever it was. So their costumes aren't even copywritten. You could still use that same design as long as it's based on the original. If they changed it and said, like Daredevil, like take Daredevil again, for example, he was blue or yellow and red, but if he was now all of a sudden green and orange, you cannot take the green and orange
Right,
Daredevil.
right. But at
That's something. Yeah,
but at the same time, you could do that and make him purple and silver, and
yeah,
Dynamite couldn't do that. So that's what's great
yeah.
about public domain characters is
Exactly.
that there's always analogous. There's something that you're
Yeah.
watching like, oh, what a great idea. I can do this. And that's one of the
Mhm.
reasons why I love these
Yeah.
characters
Yeah.
is that you can run with public domain and you can have like again tell the stories that you want to tell. And again, it's like, hey, if you want to do a better job of telling a Batman story, obviously if you tell a Batman story, unless it's fan fiction, or a pastiche. Fan fiction is for anything in the public is for anything that's been trademarked. Pastiche is anything in the public domain. And if you want to do that, then I mean, that's just what's so great. The only thing that's limiting you is with your imagination. And without going
Yeah.
too much into this, I'm gonna go, let me just very briefly touch on Doctor Who. I was not a fan of the 13th Doctor. And I would see a ton of people complain about the 13th Doctor, and rightfully so. It was horrible. Jodie Whittaker and Chris Chibnall should never be allowed to be working in that field ever again. It was awful. All of it was awful. And I have no problem insulting it left and right. So my thing was, if we don't like what's going on, why isn't there any fan fiction out there? Why isn't somebody creating their own Doctor something or other characters? I forget the name of the creator, but there's an open source domain character named Dr. No, Know. That was basically a Doctor Who analog. And it was
Yeah.
just kind of like I was sitting there begging these people, hey, if you don't like this, create one. Go do something. Why aren't people out there? I mean, people weren't happy. What was really funny was the same people that were not happy with what was going on in Star Trek, they were making Star Trek Axanar. I think I'm going to ruin that. Axanar, I think its name was. That was set during the time of Enterprise, and it was all fan fiction and stuff like that, but it was made by people that love Star Trek. It ended up being more popular than stuff Paramount was coming out with. And I
I
was
don't.
like,
I don't follow Star Trek, so I didn't know
oh,
about
okay.
that.
But I was just like, where are those people? Where are those people making the Doctor Who stuff? Why aren't
Yeah.
there out there people doing that? If you don't like the way something is doing, the great thing about the internet and public domain is it equalizes it and you can get your stuff out there as much as anybody can.
Yeah.
If you are talented enough and know how to be a little bit savvy, you can find an audience. I mean, again, probably the most popular book, one of the most popular books, and I'm not saying I'm a fan of it, 50 Shades of Grey was a fan fiction based around Twilight. And somewhere or another, it was this lady wrote about fan fiction, was really happy how it turned. She had a little bit more tying up and spanking in it than was in the Twilight books. And it became such a huge thing that she turned around and made original characters out of it and ran with it and took the vampire stuff out of it.
Number one, I wasn't aware of that. Number two, I haven't read either book.
You're
So,
not missing much, but I'm just simply,
and I haven't
I'm
seen the movies.
yeah, yeah, it's just, yeah, best not. But my attitude is that I'm fascinated by how a fan fiction became huge the way that it did, because there have been people have been writing fan fiction for as long as there's been stories for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Why did this one take off? And considering the BDSM subject matter of it, I mean, there are tons of BDSM stories like that online. What was it about this story that became huge? And that's what I'm saying is that somebody ran with it. Somebody said, I don't like the direction of the story, or I'm inspired to do something else. And that's what's great is that there is stuff out there for creators like us to create. And
Yeah.
the only thing that's limiting us is our imagination, our time, and our ability.
Yeah. No, I agree. Um, wow, there's so much I want to ask you, but you have a hard 10 p.m. cutoff, and I'm going to try to make sure we keep that. Um,
I appreciate that.
yeah,
And I'm
but
always willing to come back. You know that.
no, no, I'm happy to have you back. It's always fun chatting with you. We just went on so many topics. We haven't really talked about your specific work, really, and that's what I want people to know about. So, in the last few minutes that you're going to be around here, talk to us about where people could find your work and some of the key piece stories or books that you want people to get in their hands.
Right. Um, if you basically look up Don Everett Smith Jr. on Google, you'll see my stuff. I am at Smashwords. I am at Drive Through Comics, and I'm at Indie Planet. And I also am at Comic Book Flea Market, and I'm also on Kindle. Those are the main areas where I am at. I edited a couple of anthologies called Blood from a Tombstone. I'm working, believe it or not, I am working on the third. I need to send a big email out because I know some of the writers are getting very anxious. And they, it basically, what I write about is like, as much as I can be very cynical, I can be very cranky, and I'm not too far from being that guy in the Bermuda shorts and his socks and flip flops screaming, "Get off my lawn." One of the things I'm constantly writing about is there is hope. There is hope for tomorrow. There's hope for another day. Um, the there's always something better. There's always something better out there. I can understand why things hurt. My favorite song of all time is "The Touch" by Stan Bush from Transformers the movie. And
I'm
honestly,
not laughing. I'm not laughing because of that. It's because I say funny. I have a joke, a running joke with my wife about that song, and I enjoy the song too. It's actually one of my favorite animated films of all time.
it is.
So,
It is. It is great.
so
In fact, what was really funny, I mentioned my 20th anniversary. I said, I'm only going to marry someone that will sit down and watch Transformers the movie with me. And within my first year of dating Laura, she sat down and watched it with me. I dated a girl before that for 3 years, and she never watched it with me. Laura did. And she's like, really? That's it? That's pretty cool. I used to play with Transformers when I was growing up.
I think my wife doesn't like it anymore because I'll always do the oh God. You know, if I'm walking in the hallway and she's in my way, I'm like, out of the way, hot rod, or I'll just start saying lines. And when
Turbo riding young punk, I'll fix you next.
but I'll do the whole arise, Rodimus
Oh,
Prime.
that is my favorite part. I'll go back and watch it. It's a pity you Autobots die so easily. I would have gotten a level of satisfaction. First first Optimus Prime, then Ultra Magnus. Now use. Now you. Bam, 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 bam.
It's that, dude. I know that. If you Autobots didn't die so easily, I might not. How was it? I might feel
Get
or
a sense
find
of
satisfaction, something like that. Yeah, I love that movie, man.
I always wanted to see Hot Rod look at Galvatron and go, "Live long and prosper."
Hold on, we got a couple of comments from Dylan. I haven't even checked them out. He said, "Oh, by the way, Dylan is an animator. He says I'm no longer making Toonies. I'm making my new animated cartoon series called Danny and Friends. Started with
Very cool.
animals. That was good. Now, like I said, Dylan, anytime you want, drop a link to these cartoons if they're online, so my audience can see them. All right.
Yeah. It's these indie guys that are going to be the creators of tomorrow.
That this is the thing. My show is about supporting independence, even though sometimes I have a little bit more mainstream people on. It's about supporting the independents. And if my audience members are creators themselves, I'm always happy to have you guys drop a link so other people can find it. All right. Now, with that said, Don, I'm going to have to let you go. I'm going to drop you backstage and do my wrap up. But thank you for coming on. I'm going to have you back on, and I promise we won't sidetrack on so many things.
You know what? We should honestly do a special sidetrack episode because this is not the first time I've been on a podcast where I've gone on and on about my opinions of stuff.
And this is not the first time we've had a conversation like this either.
Yeah. But no, in all sincerity, I got to learn to talk about myself more instead of talking about what my opinions are. I didn't even begin to go on about how David Tennant is now the 14th Doctor. So
I still have to watch the episode, but
Just
We'll,
watch the last 5 minutes of it. You don't need to spend any more time with Jodie Whittaker than you need to.
listen, I will say this. I may agree with you about the storylines, and I couldn't get into the 13th Doctor myself, but it wasn't her. It was her story. I actually like Jodie as an actress. I know you're not a fan of her. I actually enjoyed her in some of the things I've seen, and I don't hate her as an actress. She could have been a really great doctor. She just got a bad. So it's like Henry Cavill. It's Superman. He could have been a great Superman, and now he should be, hopefully. But he was given bad stories.
Well, let me put it to this way. Your comments about Jodie, I can completely respect them. I understand that Jodie is just someone that well, it seemed that fate worked against her. And I can understand why people are saying, but I'm of the opinion that, well,
I
I
get
think.
I get you, man. Anyway, man,
Here's my
let me.
Jodie face. Ah! Anyway, Michael,
Um,
thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. And really, I just want to say for your friends, just Google Don Everett Smith Jr. You'll see my stuff out there. Actually, my favorite story, and you're going to find some mistakes in it, is called The Rookman of Roma Forest. And I'm putting up a new version of it soon to get rid of some of the mistakes. But that is probably my most personal story ever. And I really appreciate it. And I'm glad for this opportunity. And also bring back the Wiz. Thank you.
He's coming back. Don't worry. All right. Thanks again. I'll hang out for a moment.
Sure.
All right, guys. So that was today's show. We didn't get to learn as much about Don's work as I would have liked, but he will come back. The only thing, although he did give you look him up, I can totally recommend this book. He has an amazing story. I mean, listen, I'll recommend everything. Don has written comics for me. Unfortunately, due to certain situations that were going on in my life at the time, I never got to them or never completed them. I am now on track to finally complete them, and in 2023, you will be seeing comic books from Michael Gracia again. All right, and I'm super excited to say that. And those websites that we were promoting, um, Indie Planet and Drive Through Comics, they will be up on them. I'm not doing a Kickstarter. I want to get it into your hands as soon as possible. So no Kickstarters, no Indiegogos. I'm completing them, and they're going up on print on demand sites, so you guys can get them quicker. But also on Amazon, also boldventurepress.com, the Zorro's Exploits. You will read a great book, but you'll also have one of Don's stories illustrated by me. So go pick that up, and all the other stuff, make sure you look him up. Don Everett Smith Jr. You guys have a great night. I will see you next week. And I'm going to have, and we mentioned them, the people behind Bold Venture Press, Rich Harvey and Audrey Parenti. And we're going to talk about Pulp Adventure Con, which I will be attending in New Jersey. Come and see me there. We will learn more about that next week. So until then, you guys have a great night, weekend, week, whatever, whenever you're watching, man. I'll see you guys later.